The ship moved through the darkness of space like a silver needle threading black cloth. It was called the Endless Harmony, and it belonged to the Galactic Council. Inside its walls, 12 scientists from 7 different species prepared for a simple mission. They would visit a planet called Nine. They would study the plants and animals. They would write reports. Nothing dangerous, nothing exciting. Ambassador Al stood near the observation window and watched the stars slide past. He was a species known for their beautiful scales that changed color with their moods. Right now, his scales were a nervous shade of yellow. He had 4 thin arms that he kept folded close to his body, and his large eyes blinked sideways like a cat's. He was not watching the stars, he was watching the human. The human sat alone at a table in the common area. His name was Dr. Cole, and he was the only member of his species on the ship. He was reading something on his, sometimes nodding to himself, sometimes making small notes. He did not seem to notice that every other creature in the room had moved as far away from him as possible. Was not a large human. He stood at average height for his kind, with brown skin and short black hair that was turning gray at the edges. His eyes were dark and calm. He smiled easily. He spoke softly. He was, by all appearances, completely harmless. Ambassador Al knew better. Everyone on the ship knew better. Humans came from Earth, a planet that the Galactic Council had classified as a Category 12. The gravity there was strong enough to crush the bones of most species. The planet was covered in water that could dissolve metal. The air itself contained a gas that, in high amounts, was pure poison, and yet humans breathed it every moment of their lives. They needed it to survive. The stories about humans had spread across the galaxy like a disease. They said humans could survive wounds that would kill any other species. They said humans would chase their prey for days without stopping, running until the animal's heart simply gave out from exhaustion. They said humans kept wolves as pets. Wolves. The 4-legged killing machines with teeth like knives. Humans had looked at those creatures and decided they would make good friends. Al had read the classified reports. He had seen footage of human soldiers continuing to fight after losing limbs. He had studied their history, a long record of violence and war and survival against impossible odds. He had learned about their adrenaline, a chemical that flooded their bodies in times of danger and turned off their ability to feel pain. And now he was trapped on a ship with one of them. The door opened behind Al, and Doctor entered the observation deck. She was also, but younger, with scales that still held their bright blue color. She was the ship's physician, and she had spent the last 3 days studying the humans' medical files with a mixture of horror and fascination. "Ambassador," she said quietly, coming to stand beside him, "you are watching him again." "I cannot help it," Al admitted. "I keep expecting him to do something, attack someone, break something, but he just sits there reading about plants." "He is a scientist," said. He studies alien life forms. He seems quite good at it." "That does not make him less dangerous." Was silent for a moment. "I have been reading about human biology. Did you know they can survive the loss of several organs? They have 2 kidneys and they only need 1. They can lose large portions of their liver and it will grow back. They can survive without a stomach, without a spleen, without parts of their intestines." Al's scales flickered with unease. Why would any species evolve such redundancies? "Because their world tried very hard to kill them," said simply, "and they refused to die." Across the room, Cole looked up from his. He caught Al's eye and offered a small, friendly wave. The ambassador quickly looked away, pretending to be fascinated by a passing asteroid. Sighed and returned to his reading. He was used to this. Every mission was the same. The other species would avoid him, whisper about him, watch him like he was a bomb about to explode. He had stopped trying to make friends years ago. It was easier to just do his job and stay out of everyone's way. But sometimes, late at night, he wondered what it would be like to not be feared. The ship's communication system crackled to life. "Attention all personnel. We will arrive at 9 in 6 hours. Please prepare for planetary descent. 9 appeared in the viewport like a green and blue jewel. It was a beautiful world, covered in forests that glowed with soft bioluminescence. 2 centuries ago, a mining operation had gone wrong and collapsed half a continent into rubble. The planet had been evacuated and left to heal. Now the council wanted to know if it had recovered. The landing was smooth. The ship's doors opened, and the scientists stepped out onto soft moss that sparkled with tiny lights. The air smelled sweet, like honey and rain. Strange birds with too many wings sang in the trees. Stood apart from the group, breathing deeply. "Beautiful," he said to no one in particular. The scientist beside him, a tall, thin creature with gray skin and 3 eyes, stepped quickly away, pretended not to notice. The first day passed without incident. The scientists collected samples, recorded observations, and cataloged dozens of new species that had evolved since the evacuation. Found himself genuinely enjoying the work. The forest was peaceful. The animals were curious but not aggressive. For a few hours, he almost forgot that he was supposed to be a monster. On the second day, everything changed. Doctor, a small, round creature covered in soft fur, came running into the base camp with his scanner held high. His voice was high and excited. "I found something, a life signature in Sector 7, something large." The team gathered around his scanner. The readings were strange. Whatever was out there was bigger than anything that should exist on this planet. Much bigger. "That cannot be right," Ambassador Al said. "This world was cleared of all apex predators during the evacuation." "The readings do not lie," Doctor insisted. "Something is out there, something alive." Looked at the scanner, then at the forest. A strange feeling crept up his spine. It was a feeling that humans had learned to trust over millions of years of evolution. It was the feeling of being watched, the feeling of being hunted. "We should investigate," he said quietly. The others turned to look at him, surprised. It was the first time he had spoken directly to the group. "We should be careful," he continued, "but we need to know what we are dealing with." Ambassador Al wanted to refuse. He wanted to stay in the safety of the ship and call for backup, but the human was right. They needed to know. "Tomorrow," the ambassador decided, "we will investigate tomorrow." That night, Cole lay awake in his quarters and listened to the sounds of the alien forest. Somewhere in the darkness, something was waiting for them. He did not know what it was, but he knew, with a certainty that went deeper than thought, that tomorrow would be a day that none of them would ever forget. The morning came wrapped in fog. The bioluminescent forest glowed softly through the mist, creating an eerie blue light that made everything look like a dream. The scientists gathered at the edge of camp, checking their equipment and trying not to look afraid. Cole stood slightly apart from the group, as always. He had dressed in simple field clothes and carried only a small pack with water and basic supplies. He had no weapon. The council had strict rules about weapons on survey missions. Plasma guns and force blades stayed locked in the ship's armory. Ambassador Al addressed the team. His scales were a pale, worried green. "We will approach Sector 7 in a standard observation pattern. Doctor will track the life signature. We will observe from a safe distance, record our findings, and return to camp. No one approaches the creature, whatever it is. Is that understood?" Everyone nodded, noticed that several team members were shaking. The walk through the forest took 2 hours. The terrain was difficult, full of twisted roots and soft ground that sucked at their feet. Strange insects buzzed around them and small creatures watched from the branches above. The deeper they went, the quieter the forest became. "That is strange," whispered the physician. "Where are all the animals?" She was right, the birds had stopped singing. The insects had disappeared. The forest was completely, unnaturally silent. Felt the hair on his arm stand up. This was wrong. This was very wrong. "Doctor," he said quietly, "how close is the signature?" The small, furry scientist checked his scanner. His hands were trembling. Very close, perhaps 100 meters, through those trees near the river. The group moved forward slowly, carefully. They pushed through a wall of thick vegetation and emerged onto the bank of a wide, shallow river. The water sparkled with bioluminescent algae. On the other side, a massive shape lay in the shadows. At first thought it was a rock, then it moved. The creature rose from the riverbank like a nightmare coming to life. It was enormous, at least 8 meters long and half as tall. Its body was covered in black armor plates that gleamed like wet stone. It had 6 legs, each one ending in a curved claw the size of a sword. Its head was a horror of teeth and eyes and twitching sensory stalks. Doctor made a small, broken sound. His scanner fell from his hands. Impossible, Ambassador Al breathed. His scales had gone completely white. That is a... Did not know what a was, but from the way every alien on the team had frozen in absolute terror, he understood that it was very, very bad. I thought they were extinct, whispered. The Council killed them all 200 years ago. They killed them all. The turned its massive head toward them. A dozen eyes, each one the size of a dinner plate, focused on the group of small creatures standing on the riverbank. Its jaws opened slowly, revealing rows upon rows of teeth that curved backward like hooks. A long, rumbling sound came from its throat. It was laughing. "Run," Ambassador Al said. "Run now." The team scattered, but that was faster than anything that size had any right to be. It crossed the river in a single bound, water exploding around its massive body. Its first swipe caught 2 scientists, small creatures with 4 arms and gentle faces. One moment they were running. The next moment they were gone, swallowed whole by the creature's expanding jaws. Doctor, a warrior who had joined the mission as security, turned and fired his personal sidearm. The plasma bolt hit this armor and splashed away like water on hot metal. The creature did not even slow down. Its tail whipped around and caught Doctor across the chest. He flew through the air and hit a tree with a sound that would never forget. There was between them and the camp now, between them and the ship, between them and safety. Grabbed and pulled her behind a massive fallen tree. Ambassador Al scrambled after them, his 4 arms clutching at the bark. Around them, the screams of their colleagues filled the air. "What is that thing?" demanded. Al gasped. His voice was shaking so badly that could barely understand him. "The apex predator of 12 conquered worlds. They are virtually indestructible. They feel no pain. They know no fear. The Council spent 50 years and 10 million soldiers to exterminate them." Another scream, another wet, crunching sound. "Apparently," said weakly, "they missed one." Looked over the fallen tree. There was methodically hunting down the survivors. It moved through the forest like death itself, its massive body somehow silent despite its size. 3 more of their team were already gone. Only a handful remained, hiding in the underbrush, too afraid to move. Then saw Ambassador Al. The elderly had tried to run, but his foot had caught on a root and he had fallen. Now he lay on the ground, his scales flashing every color of pure terror as the slowly approached him. The creature was taking its time. It was enjoying this. "No," said. He did not think. He did not plan. Something ancient and powerful woke up inside him, something that had been sleeping in human blood for 1,000,000 years. His heart began to pound. His muscles flooded with warmth. His vision narrowed until the only thing he could see was the monster and the helpless creature it was about to kill. Cole stood up from behind the tree. "Hey," he shouted. The stopped, its dozen eyes swiveled toward him. Every alien in the clearing stared at the human with absolute incomprehension. What was he doing? He had no weapon. He had no armor. He was nothing but soft flesh and fragile bones. Stepped over the fallen tree and walked toward the... His pace was steady. His breathing was calm. His hands hung loose at his sides, fingers slightly curled. "You want something to hunt," he said. His voice was quiet, but it carried through the silent forest like thunder. "Then hunt me." The tilted its massive head. Something shifted in its dozen eyes. For 200 years it had been the most feared thing in the galaxy. Nothing had ever challenged it. Nothing had ever approached it willingly. Until now. Ambassador Al tried to speak, tried to warn the human away, but his voice would not work. He could only watch as Cole stepped between him and the monster. The human cracked his neck. He rolled his shoulders. He looked up at the creature that towered over him like a mountain of teeth and claws and armored death. "Come on," he said. The roared and charged. And Cole, unarmed and alone, ran forward to meet it. The survivors of the survey team watched from the shadows of the forest. They could not run. They could not look away. They could only witness what happened next and carry the memory with them for the rest of their lives. The struck first. Its massive claw swept through the air with enough force to cut through starship armor. Any creature in the galaxy would have been torn in half. Was not there when the claw arrived. He had moved at the last possible moment, diving forward and rolling under the creature's reach. The claw passed so close that it tore his shirt, but it did not touch his flesh. Before the could recover, was on his feet again, inside the arc of its arms, too close for it to strike effectively. The creature snarled and snapped its massive jaws, ducked. Teeth the size of daggers clicked shut above his head. He reached up and grabbed one of the creature's sensory stalks, the long, flexible tendrils that grew from its head. These stalks were how they tracked its prey. They were sensitive. They were delicate. Pulled with all his strength. The stalk tore free with a wet, ripping sound. The screamed. It was not a roar of anger. It was a scream of pain, a scream of shock. No prey had ever heard it before. The creature thrashed wildly, trying to crush the tiny human beneath its body. Rolled away, the torn stalk still clutched in his fist. Purple blood dripped down his arm. "Yes," he breathed, "you can bleed." The turned on him with all dozen of its eyes blazing with hatred. It was no longer playing with its food. It wanted this human dead. It charged again. This time did not dodge completely. The creature's claw caught him across the ribs, tearing through flesh and muscle. Blood sprayed across the forest floor. Gasped from her hiding place. The wound was terrible. Any would have fallen immediately. Any would have died from shock alone. Cole did not fall. His body flooded with adrenaline, the chemical that humans had evolved over millions of years of desperate survival. Pain became distant, like a voice calling from far away. Fear dissolved into something else entirely, something older, something more dangerous. The human looked down at the blood pouring from his side. Then he looked up at and he smiled. The hesitated. In 200 years of hunting, no prey had ever smiled at it. Attacked. He moved faster than any of the aliens had ever seen a creature his size move. He did not run from He ran toward it, using its own body as a ladder, climbing up its armored leg before it could react. The creature twisted and snapped, but was already on its back, clinging to the ridges of its armor. He found a gap between two plates, a soft place where the armor did not quite meet. He drove his fingers into it and pulled. The bucked like a wild animal, held on. His shoulders screamed with effort. His injured side burned like fire, but he did not let go. Armor tore, flesh ripped. The screamed again, louder than before. Ambassador Al had made it back to the other survivors. He watched the fight with his mouth hanging open. His scales had gone a color that his species had no name for. "What is he doing?" one of them whispered. "He is winning," Al breathed. The finally managed to throw off. He flew through the air and hit the ground hard, rolling several times before coming to a stop. For a moment, he did not move. The advanced ichor dripping from its wounds. It was hurt, but it was still enormous, still deadly, still the apex predator of 12 worlds. Pushed himself up onto his hands and knees. His left arm was badly injured. His ribs were probably broken. Blood covered half his body. He should not have been able to stand. He stood. The human and the monster faced each other across the torn-up clearing. Both were bleeding. Both were breathing hard. The air smelled of blood and broken plants and something electric, like the moment before a storm. "I am not your prey," said. His voice was rough, barely more than a growl. "I am not your victim." He took a step forward. "On my world, things like you were everywhere. Claws and teeth and hunger. Every day was a fight to survive." Another step. "We did not have armor like yours. We did not have claws like yours. We were small and soft and weak." Another step. "But we did not die. We refused to die. We fought and bled and suffered, and we won, every time, against everything, because we do not know how to quit." The lowered its head and charged one final time. Met it head on. He caught one of its claws as it came down, turning the blow aside with strength that should have been impossible for a creature his size. Then he was climbing again, faster than before, ignoring the teeth that snapped at him, ignoring the smaller arms that clawed at his back. He reached the creature's head. He found the place where the skull plates met, a small gap that protected the brain. He drove his fingers into the gap, wedged his hands into the opening, and pulled. The skull began to separate. The creature screamed and thrashed, held on. His muscles tore, his bones cracked, but he did not stop. Slowly, impossibly, the armor plates came apart. Cole, covered in blood, both human and alien, tore this head open with his bare hands. The creature shuddered once, twice, and collapsed. Silence fell over the clearing. The greatest predator the galaxy had ever known lay dead in the mud, killed by a single human with no weapons, no armor, nothing but determination and the absolute refusal to die. Stood over the corpse. His legs were shaking. His vision was going dark around the edges. He had maybe seconds before his body finally gave out. He turned to look at the surviving aliens, huddled together at the edge of the clearing. They stared back at him with expressions he could not read. "Is everyone okay?" he asked. Then his eyes rolled back and he fell. Ambassador Al was the first to reach him. The old knelt beside the fallen human and pressed his hands against the worst of the wounds, trying to stop the bleeding. "Get the medical kit," he screamed. "Now he is still alive, do not let him die." Ran to help, her scales flashing with fear and something else, something that might have been wonder. Cole lay in the mud, surrounded by aliens who had feared him, and slowly began the process of not dying. Again. The medical bay of the Endless Harmony was not designed for humans. The beds were too short. The equipment was calibrated for different biologies. The lights were the wrong color, but Doctor had done her best, and somehow, impossibly, Cole was still alive. He floated in and out of consciousness for 3 days. His body was a map of damage: 17 deep cuts, 4 broken ribs, a collapsed lung. His left hand was so badly torn that had considered removing it entirely, internal bleeding in at least 3 places. And yet every time checked on him, his condition was slightly better. On the 2nd day, she called Ambassador Al to the medical bay. "Look at this," she said, pointing to her scanner. Her scales were a confused mix of colors. "This wound here on his shoulder. Yesterday it was deep enough to see bone. Today it is half closed." Al stared at the readings. "That is not possible. Our best healing technology could not work that fast." "It is not technology," said quietly. "It is biology. His cells are repairing themselves. His blood is clotting faster than I can measure. His immune system is fighting off infections that would kill any of us in hours." She paused. "His body is designed for this, designed to be broken and heal, again and again and again." "How?" Al asked. "How could evolution create such a thing?" Thought about everything she had read about Earth. The constant danger, the predators and diseases and natural disasters. the endless struggle for survival. Because anything less, she said, would not have survived. On the third day, opened his eyes. The first thing he saw was Ambassador Al sitting beside his bed. The old looked tired, like he had not slept in days. But when he saw wake up, his scales flushed with relief. "You are alive," Al said. Tried to speak. His throat was dry and rough. "Water," he managed. Al helped him drink. The cool liquid was the best thing had ever tasted. "How long?" asked. 3 days, says you should be dead. She says no creature should survive the injuries you received." Al paused. "She also says you will make a full recovery. Apparently, humans do not follow the normal rules." Laughed weakly. Then he winced because laughing hurt. "The others?" he asked. "The team?" Al's scales darkened with grief. 5 dead, including doctor and both researchers. The rest survived because of you." Closed his eyes. 5 dead. 5 people he had failed to save. He knew it was not his fault. He knew he had done more than anyone could have expected. But the weight of those 5 lives settled on his chest like a stone. "I am sorry," he said. "Sorry?" Al's voice was sharp with surprise. "You killed alone with your bare hands. You saved 7 lives. Why would you apologize?" Did not have an answer for that. While recovered, the footage spread. Someone on the team had been recording when the attack began. They had kept recording through everything that followed. The footage showed the emerging from the river. It showed the deaths of the team members. It showed Cole stepping forward to face the monster. And it showed what happened next. The video was uploaded to a personal communication node with basic encryption. That encryption held for approximately 4 hours. Then it leaked onto the broader galactic network, and within a day, every species in the Council had seen it. The reactions were immediate and intense. A peaceful species that had never fully trusted humans demanded an emergency council session. They wanted humanity quarantined. They wanted Earth isolated. They wanted guarantees that these terrifying creatures would never be allowed to threaten the galaxy. Though a species that prided itself on military strength quietly began upgrading their defense systems. They did not make public statements, but their actions spoke clearly enough. They sent a private message to the human government. It contained a single word in their ancient warrior language. The closest translation was respect. And everywhere, on thousands of worlds, beings of every shape and size watched the video and asked themselves the same question. What else are humans capable of? First learned about the footage when Al brought him a. "You should see this," the ambassador said. Watched himself kill the. He watched his own eyes go empty and cold as the adrenaline took over. He watched himself tear the creature apart with his bare hands. "I look like a monster," he said quietly. "Yes," Al agreed. "You do." He paused. "A monster that saved my life. A monster that fought for people who had been afraid of him. A monster that asked if everyone was okay before collapsing from wounds that should have killed him." Looked up at the ambassador. "I was afraid of you," Al admitted. "From the moment you came aboard, I was afraid. I treated you poorly. I kept my distance. I thought you were dangerous." "I am dangerous," said. "Yes, but I was wrong about what kind of dangerous." Al reached out with one of his 4 hands and touched gently on the arm. "You are dangerous like fire is dangerous. Terrible when it is against you, but warm and protective when it is on your side." Did not know what to say. "The council is meeting tomorrow," Al continued. "They are calling it the human question. Many species are afraid. They want to isolate your people, keep you contained." "I understand," said. The familiar weight of loneliness settled over him. "I am going to speak against them," Al said. Blinked to what? "I am going to tell them what I saw. Not a monster, not a beast. A person who could have run and chose to fight. A person who could have saved himself and chose to save others." Al's scales shimmered with determination. The galaxy does not need to fear humanity. The galaxy needs to welcome them. For a long moment, could not speak. His throat was tight with an emotion he could not name. "Thank you," he finally managed. Al stood. "No, Dr. Cole, thank you." He left alone with his thoughts. Outside the medical bay window, the stars drifted past. Somewhere out there, billions of beings were debating whether humanity was a threat or a miracle. Cole, the man who had torn apart with his bare hands, lay back on his bed and hoped that the galaxy would give his species a chance. He hoped they would not make him regret it. 6 months passed. The Galactic Council's emergency session had lasted for 3 weeks. Representatives from over 200 species had argued, debated, threatened, and pleaded. Some wanted humanity locked away forever. Others wanted to pretend the video had never existed. A few, very few, had suggested something different. In the end, Ambassador Al's speech had turned the tide. He had stood before the council and told them what he had seen. Not just the violence, not just the blood. He had told them about a man who stepped between a monster and a stranger. He had told them about a man who asked if everyone was okay while his own body was falling apart. He had told them about a species that had evolved on a world of endless death and had somehow, against all odds, learned to protect instead of destroy. "We have 2 choices," Al had said. "We can fear humanity and make them our enemy, or we can embrace them and make them our shield. I know which choice I prefer." The vote had been close, but in the end, humanity received its first formal invitation to join the Galactic Council, not as observers, not as probationary members, as full partners. The galaxy had changed. Within months, human specialists began appearing on worlds throughout Council space. They were not soldiers, not officially. They called themselves consultants, advisors, trainers, but everyone knew what they really were. They were protectors. On the mining colony of 7, a human woman named Sarah organized the defense against a pirate raid. She coordinated the evacuation of 3,000 civilians while leading a team of 8 against 40 armed attackers. The pirates retreated. Sarah was shot twice during the fighting. She was back at work the next day. On the agricultural world of Prime, a human man named James Wright tracked down a nest of predators that had been killing farmers for months. He went into their caves alone with a flashlight and a knife. He came out 3 days later, tired and hungry, with the head of the alpha predator in his bag. The attack stopped. On a dozen worlds, in 100 situations, humans appeared when they were needed most. They did not ask for glory. They did not demand payment. They simply showed up, fixed the problem, and moved on to the next crisis. The galaxy had never seen anything like it. Cole heard these stories from his hospital bed on Earth, where he was finally recovering properly. His injuries from the had healed, but the doctors insisted on keeping him for observation. Apparently, his body had pushed itself so far past its limits that they wanted to make sure everything was actually working correctly. He was reading about Sarah's defense of 7 when a message arrived on his personal communication device. It was from the Galactic Council. They wanted him to return to 9. The memorial ceremony was held at the exact spot where had killed The clearing had been cleaned up, the bodies of the dead recovered and returned to their families. But the ground still bore the scars of the battle, gouges from the creature's claws, dark stains that might have been blood. Representatives from 11 species stood in a circle around the clearing. Stood among them, wearing his best clothes and trying not to feel uncomfortable with all the attention. Ambassador Al gave the dedication speech. "We thought we understood the universe," he said. His scales were a calm, peaceful blue. "We cataloged its dangers. We measured its threats. We built our walls and hid behind them, hoping that the darkness would pass us by." He paused, looking around at the gathered representatives. "Then we met humanity, and we learned that hiding was never the answer. We learned that some beings are not meant to flee from danger. They are meant to face it, to fight it, to protect others from it. He turned to look directly at. We were afraid of humans. Many of us still are. But fear is not always a bad thing. Sometimes fear is a sign that you have found something powerful, something important. He spread his forearms in the gesture of profound respect. Humanity is powerful. Humanity is important. And we are blessed beyond measure that they choose to use their power to protect rather than destroy. The memorial was simple. A circle of stones around the clearing, carved with the names of those who had died. In the center stood a single pillar, engraved with words in every language of the council. Had chosen the words himself. Here, one human reminded the galaxy that the will to protect is stronger than the will to destroy. After the ceremony, stood apart from the crowd, watching the twin suns set behind the bioluminescent forest. He still was not comfortable being the center of attention. He probably never would be. A small figure approached him. He looked down to see a young child, no bigger than a human toddler, covered in soft purple fur. She looked up at him with wide, curious eyes. "Is it true?" she asked in halting standard, the common language of the council. "You fought the monster with just your hands." Knelt down to her level. His left hand, the one that had been torn apart, still bore scars. He would carry them for the rest of his life. "Yes," he said gently, "it is true." "Were you scared?" Thought about the question. He remembered the terror of facing the. He remembered the moment when his body had taken over and fear had become something else entirely. "I was very scared," he admitted, "but I was more scared of what would happen to my friends if I did not fight." The child tilted her head. "We are your friends." Looked up. Around the clearing, representatives of 11 species were watching him. Some of them had feared humanity. Some of them still did. But they were all here together, honoring the dead and celebrating the living. 6 months ago, Cole had been alone on a ship full of aliens who avoided him. Now he stood on a world far from Earth, surrounded by beings who looked to him with something he had never expected to see. "Hope." He smiled at the little girl. "Yeah," he said, "you are now." The child beamed at him with an expression that transcended species. Then she turned and ran back to her parents, chattering excitedly in her native language. Ambassador Al came to stand beside. "She will tell that story for the rest of her life," the old said. "The day she met the human who killed." "I hope that is not the only thing she remembers," said. Al's scales shifted to a warm shade of gold. "It will not be. She will remember that you were kind, that you knelt down to speak to her, that you told her the truth." He paused. "That is what the galaxy will remember about humanity in the end. Not just that you are dangerous, but that you are good." Did not know if that was true. Humans were complicated. They could be cruel and selfish and destructive, but they could also be brave and generous and kind. Maybe that was the point. Maybe that was what made them special. They were not perfect, but they tried. The suns finished setting. The forest began to glow with its own soft light. Cole, Monster Slayer, stood among his new friends and watched the stars come out. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was waiting. New dangers, new challenges, new chances to protect the innocent and stand against the darkness. Cole was ready. Humanity was ready. And the galaxy would never be the same.